bi-monthly council meeting. Present by video is our mayor, Rick Helfer Chase, our council members, Carter Finnegan, Andrew Bouchette, John Manette, our clerk treasurer, James Johnson. Also present is Public Works, Corey Marcoux, zoning administrator, Frank Cheedy, Mike Brown from our rec department, and our new administrative assistant, Gary Schultz. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Next up is any additions or deletions to the agenda.
I have none.
No, thank you.
None.
I have none. Mr. Johnson?
None.
Mr. Mayor?
Nothing to add.
Okay, great. Our consent agenda, which consists of minutes of 8/18/2025, AP warrants of 8/27/25, 8/28/25, 8/28/25, 9/4/25. PR warrants of 9/4/25, and a liquor license for Eden Cider, and a request from East Side for catering the event at the Gateway. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, Kevin, I have one thing that
Okay.
I just want to let you all know. The item from Eastside, the liquor permit request from Eastside, we received it on Friday. I think it was Friday. It was too late to try and get it before the council for an event that was taking place over the weekend. So it's been approved by the liquor board. The next step from the state, the next step comes to us, and we would normally approve it in advance. In this instance, I just want to let you all know that because this was a trust business in town that we regularly say yes to these requests on as a courtesy, even though we received it so late, I went ahead and signed it on behalf of the council. So in essence, you're blessed with something that I already did on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve said consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion, is there a second?
I will second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Consent agenda approved. Next up is Mr. Riccardi with a public hearing.
Frank Ricciardi, we own 95 Main Street, corner of Coventry and Main. We are remodeling our building, putting apartments upstairs and 3 retail spots downstairs, and I wanted to say that we're actually going after the community block grant, possibly to help us along the way to remodel and restructure and create some housing. And that's it.
How much is the grant for?
I am so sorry, I don't have that information in front of me. But I believe it's all, Michelle has all filed it all already, and so we're trying to take the next step in this.
Yeah. Wish you luck.
Thank you, thank you. 5 apartments upstairs and 3 retail spots downstairs, so.
Now is that going to be all, both stories upstairs, apartments?
Excuse me?
You have a 3-story building, right?
2-story.
Oh, 2-story.
Just 2 stories, yeah. Basement, first floor where the restaurant was, and which is going to be all retail, and next floor, which was office space, turning that into housing.
Right? Definitely.
So, Frank, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So I just want to make sure I understand, there's no action needed on your part from the council or mayor, is that right?
No, it's just to announce that we're doing, applying for the community block grant, and so it can go into the newspaper, and that's part of the process.
And a for-profit business, I really don't know much about CBDGs. Can you educate us? Like that, anybody can apply for one. A business can apply for one of those. If you fit into the criteria to go ahead and do it, we're creating housing here in an area that desperately needs it. We fit right into that criteria just to start off with that. But I mean, anybody can apply as long as it fits into what the community needs. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And I'm thrilled, as you suggest, we do need the housing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Marcoux. They talk about water meters.
Yes. Know some of you, but not everybody. I'm Corey Marcoux. I work for the Public Works Department. We were tasked with installing the meters by the task force, and beginning of August is when we officially started doing the rough work, trying to get some scheduling done. I was kind of the point guy for taking the appointments for installs now, and been a good uptick in getting them installed. Our first meter was put in around the 12th of August, and since then we've done 45 meters, and 5 of those were done by plumbers, and 40 of them were installed by our staff at either the Public Works Department or the sewer plant. So, I mean, not much of a presentation to give other than rough numbers. We have encountered houses that we haven't been able to put the meters in because of some plumbing changes that maybe need to be made, or structural changes. You know, there might be a wall in the way. But that's kind of where we stand with the meters so far. We're trying to reach out to the public as much as we can. We've been going from street to street, essentially taking some streets from the west side, some from the east side with door hangers, and just hanging on the unmetered houses and looking for a response. The public's been great so far. Not everything's perfect. You know, some people are a little upset, and some people have been forgotten. I know in the past there's been some issues with scheduling. You know, people get mixed up. They've been on this list for it's supposed to be for years. I've gone through that list because the task force provided it to me and made the phone calls. A lot of them were out of service, or it's that old that the properties have changed hands. But I've had, I tried that list, and now we're just moving forward and getting as many people as we can at this point. I don't know if there's it's not really a whole lot to.
So how many would a typical day would you install?
Right now, we've been doing around 4 to 5. Initially, the sewer department were doing most of them because they had done the work, and we had some of our employees going with them to learn. And since then, our staff has taken more of them, and then if we have a project going on, we'll call them and they'll fill in on those vacancies. But that's typically around 4 to 5. But the big issue is whether or not alterations need to be made to get that meter put in. But so it's hit or miss right now. I'd say it's been around 60 visited homes, and there's probably about 15 right now that need alterations of some sort, maybe small, maybe some are bigger. And we're still trying to figure out the right ways if we're going to hook to galvanized lines and things like that. So we're learning as we're going. The data's getting better, like tracking the data. Are you Carrie? I haven't met you yet, but she helped me out with Excel and made a better spreadsheet for me to track that better. So going forward, it should be very accurate information, and that's the progress that we're at to today. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
If somebody called, how long would they have to wait before a meter would be installed?
If they called me tomorrow, I could get them in this week. Yeah. And then, I mean, if they have vacancies or a day, because a lot of times it's obviously between 7 and 2 o'clock that that we work 7 to 3, but I don't want to put somebody out too late on a job unless we absolutely have to. So people can call, and I mean, we can schedule into October. We can do whatever. If they have a day off that we can work with them, you know, we'll get in there and put the meter in. So, you know, the public, just don't be afraid to reach out to us, and I will get back to you. There will be, you know, no delay. I'll get back to you as soon as I can and schedule those meters.
There's also a website, correct, that you can send an email to?
Yeah, so on the door hangers, there's an email address. I think it's Newport Water Department at Gmail. Pretty basic, but those will come to me, and there's a number with a voicemail. I'll get the voicemail either through the visual voicemail or in an email, and I'll reply that way as well. So that's the best way. Just, you know, if your neighbor gets one and you want one, just talk to them and get that information over to me, and we can get over there as soon as we can. The guys have been good. Our department kind of does a lot of different things. I mean, we built playgrounds, and now we're on to this another chapter, and everyone's kind of adapted and willing to learn. So, you know, the department as a whole has been great in supporting the city and moving forward with getting these put in.
Rick's got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to make a quick comment kind of as background, and then I have a specific question, Corey. The comment is just to kind of let folks know that the Water and Sewer Task Force really worked through much of the summer trying to figure out a strategy to how to begin to get these done. And we interviewed a company, a for-profit company that we could contract with, theoretically still could. And after going through the numbers, made a decision that we had the right configuration of people and the right ability to prioritize this as a task for this fall. So the task force asked Tom Bernier and Corey to try and prioritize this and to see how we would do for a period of a couple of months, and that we would come back then and talk about how we would fund the next section and how it's gone having our own staff do the installs. So I'm thrilled, Corey, with the work that you've done coordinating it and with the work that your team has done actually doing the installs. We are definitely on track for the goals that task force set for the months of August and September. So we're doing really well with that. And I guess my only question for you is, and you may not have the answer off the top of your head because we didn't up to this, but can you say a word about what a typical install costs the city, like for the actual material that's going into the meter and stuff?
Yeah, Tom provided some information in the email that we had a while ago. I did bring it. Looks like the average cost for a 5/8 T10 meter with the corner horns and the compression joints is $440. That's without, you know, including our labor. That's just the materials, yeah.
That's really great to hear. You know, the amounts that we were looking at, even if we did kind of just a simple install with the same material that you're talking about, we're going to be running us well over twice that to do an install of a meter. So I'm thrilled with how it's going. And we are actively working behind the scenes trying to figure out how to fund a whole bunch more of these, assuming that's the direction that the Water and Sewer Task Force recommends and the council agrees to go. And we'll come back to that conversation the end of September, beginning of October, I guess. But thank you, Corey.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next up is William Abate and Allison Lowe from the MPDA.
We have PowerPoints too.
And we have paper copies of maps.
People can feel free to grab some copies up here. I'm gonna do my.
I have 15 copies.
So you can share with your partner next to you if you need. I'm gonna pull it up on. Oh my gosh, I just realized only one screen.
So, okay, because I was just worried that people wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah. I know.
Where's the best place for us to stand? Like here?
We used to have a podium, but then the microphone stuck.
That's okay.
So center-ish is usually where folks are.
Center-ish?
but I could pull it up here and if you
Because
wanted to like.
I feel like I'd be blocking the screen. That's
Yeah.
like controlling the
You
audience.
can see from the sides.
Yeah,
We're not
you
sitting
can,
right in
okay.
the center, so
Okay.
that would be fine.
Okay, so my name is Allison Lowe, and this is Liam Mabate. And we have been working feverishly on rolling out Act 181. It's a giant onion with many layers and lots of implications to future development patterns. So Liam has been doing about, what, 80% of the future land use mapping?
Yep.
And I know that somebody from NVDA has been to the city council and to the planning commission about future land use mapping. But part of that future land use mapping element is also to identify areas in your community that may qualify for either a partial exemption of Act 250 or a full exemption in certain areas. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. Primarily, we're going to be talking about Tier 1A, which is a full permanent exemption of all Act 250 development in a certain center of development, like your downtown. But we're going to touch on a little bit about what is called Tier 1B status, which is a partial exemption of Act 250, and that would be exempting up to 50 units of housing on 10 acres of land or less. Currently, the city qualifies for some exemptions from Act 250, and that's to promote housing development. I know that it's very important to the city council to create housing opportunities. Act 181 creates an opportunity to establish permanent exemptions to Act 250. The exemptions are all opt-in. None of these are automatic. So that's why we're here to talk to City Council and to you, because it would happen at the request of the municipality. So do you have anything to add to that preamble, Liam?
Well, we have a lot of information to throw at you today, and we hope it's digestible.
Yeah.
Advanced.
Yes, please.
So the Tier 1A requirements, the ones that we are highlighting are the areas that would need would need either some further questions or a little bit more work from you, but you've always had a regionally approved municipal plan. Also, the boundaries of the Tier 1A area would have to be consistent with what we come up with in our, called the future land use map. You would have to revise your flood hazard regs, and you would also have to adopt zoning and subdivision bylaws that further smart growth principles. You'd have adopted form-based code, so that would be...
That checks one of the boxes.
This
to
does
have
check one of the
design
boxes.
regulations.
The maintenance of significant natural communities, which we also call rare, threatened, and endangered species, affectionately known as RTE in the planning world. If they are located inside your Tier 1A exempt areas, you would have to have special provisions in your zoning bylaw for protection of those. We expect to see some guidance from the LURB in the future. You'd have to show sufficient water and sewer capacity. And finally, you'd have to show that you have adequate municipal staff support for comprehensive capital planning and development review. And we'll go into more about that in a subsequent slide.
Just because I don't think everyone here is familiar with some of these acronyms, the LURB is the Land Use Review Board, which was established by the governor in January, and there's 5 people appointed by the governor at the recommendation of the legislature, and they're in charge of all this stuff. They have to approve these maps, they have to approve Tier 1A applications, and stuff like that.
We are under a deadline to get a new regional plan that is, with a future land use map that is approved by the Land Use Review Board by the end of next year, which feels like a long time off, but I can assure you it's not. We're working round the clock.
Trying to accommodate feedback from 50 municipalities. So the benefits of Tier 1A would be a permanent total exemption of Act 250 permitting for the Tier 1A parts of the city, but any existing Act 250 permits in that part of the city would be taken over and administered by the city from then on out. There's something else I should say. Yeah, that's basically it. That part's the simple part.
So this is just to address your regional approval. This is when you adopt your city plan, you've always requested regional approval. We come up here and we hold a hearing, and then we usually review the plan well in advance, and we determine that it has everything that is required in a duly adopted plan. Then we bring it to the board approves it, and then a second time in the 8-year planning cycle, we come back and we meet with you and we confirm whether or not you're still planning, like your planning commission is still meeting and you're working to implement the plan. And then after a duly warned hearing, again, our board votes whether or not to confirm your planning process for a second time. So that's what this is all about.
And
you've always met that requirement.
Okay, so here we get into the first map in the packet. I presented to number of you. If anyone else wants a packet, there's just, I think, 2 or 3 copies left right here.
Yes.
So this map has a lot going on because there's a lot going on in Newport City. But the main areas to look at are the so-called pink colors. So the dark purple, which is designated downtown, and we've expanded it. Previously, it was just the waterfront plaza in the area west of the lake, but NVDA felt that made sense to add Gardner Park, so we did that. And then at the recommendation of the Planning Commission, we also added an area along East Main Street, out to Siasab, but not beyond that. And then next we have also this dark pink color called a planned growth area, and then there's a light pink color called village area. And these are all the areas that are eligible for exemptions from Act 250, as well as a list of benefits from the Department of Housing and Community Development that revolve mainly around tax credits for income-producing properties, but also priority funding for infrastructure upgrades and expansions.
Should we, what was required to be designated as a planned growth area in terms of water, sewer,
Sure.
capacity?
So the planned growth areas all have to be within a quarter mile of a sidewalk or bike path, and or they can be on a low traffic street that has a speed limit of 25 miles an hour. And then it also needs to have access to water or sewer and be zoned for dense development. The village area, by contrast, is a little looser. These tend to be neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, and they have access to, sometimes have access to water, sometimes they don't. But if they don't have access to water, they need to have soils that the state deems suitable for septic systems, so they can accommodate additional housing.
Any questions?
I noticed that some of the light pink areas extend into Derby.
That is true, yes?
Yep.
So you're coordinating this with Derby, I take it?
Yes. We're not only coordinating with neighboring communities, but in some cases we're coordinating these future land use designations with neighboring regional planning commissions.
So yes, part of the village area extends into Derby, and that could grant Derby Act 250 exemption for housing purposes only in those parts of Derby.
Yeah, but from the point of view of what the community looks like, you can't tell the difference between Newport and Derby. You drive from one to the other, it all looks like one integrated neighborhood in a couple of the areas. So it certainly makes sense from appearances.
I think that's one of the advantages of, you know, Act 181 is kind of challenging, but by taking this transect-based approach to future land use mapping, I mean, future land use mapping is something that we've been required to do since the beginning of time, as well as the municipalities. But now we're thinking of it more in a transect-based approach. And so, yeah, I mean, municipal boundaries become less relevant. It's really more of what the built environment is and what you experience when you go through those neighborhoods.
Well, municipal boundaries are sometimes relevant. So like the village area does not extend into Newport town because they do not have subdivision regulations, so they're ineligible for village areas. Whereas Derby has subdivision regulations, so they can't extend into Newport. And so before this map that I've been working on all year, NVDA's regional future land use map only had dots that identified regional urban centers, village centers, and industrial parks. But now, just like our other 10 counterparts across the state, we're required to allocate every acre of the Northeast Kingdom into one of 11 categories. Yes?
You're talking about the positives of not having Act 250, and I get some of that. However, what about the other side of not having Act 250?
We're not here to tell you whether or not to pursue Act 250 exemption. Act 250 exemption has been proposed as a means of removing some of the barriers to achieving housing goals. It's ultimately up to the municipality. It's opt-in. That's what I said at the beginning. This is opt-in. We need to explain this to the communities, how they can establish this status. We're not telling you one way or the other to do that.
If you don't tell us the downside of not having Act 250, you've already mentioned some of the positive, then how can you have an informed decision?
Well, one of the major downsides is that you do have to administer all of the underlying permits. And that is an administrative burden. The other is, and some communities vary from others, but you know, we've met with some DRBs who have felt that the Act 250 process helps inform their decision-making process. And so they don't want to lose it. But again, it's up to the community. We're not here to twist your arm one way or the other.
I would also add,
Like the facts.
well, we have a lot more facts to present.
Yeah.
But I would also add that while it does exempt you from Act 250, it does not exempt some of the underlying permits of Act 250, particularly wetlands permits and stormwater permits. Those would still be in place in Act 250 exempt areas. Yes?
I think Act 250 helped us immensely when ANC Bio came in and said at one time it failed, but they intended to come in and put a biochemical plant in, and they didn't even have any precautions set up for what they claimed they could do, like work on dangerous viruses like anthrax. And when it was obvious that that was so, before the Act 250 committee, they specifically said, you know, you can build your building and you can do some of the sciences you want to do, but you cannot work on dangerous viruses. This permit will not extend to that unless you can show us what you've got. Who will do that now if we don't have Act 250 to do it?
Well, I think what you'll see, and we need to get further into this presentation, the onus is going to rest on the municipality for ensuring that you have the kind of development and planning policies that are going to work for you. This is not a decision to make lightly.
And to some people, it's great to have the municipality make the decision because it's the state getting out of your hair, but to other people, it's not great because it's more, there's not someone else helping you make these decisions. It's all on the city.
I can give you a specific example, which is if it wasn't for Act 250, we would have leachate from Casella going into the lake. It was thanks to Act 250 that was stopped, because our municipality wanted to keep it going because they made money from it. And I understand wanting to bring in money, but that was poisoning the lake and poisoning us.
And I understand your concerns about, the landfill. I just need to make sure that the areas that are being discussed for exemption here do not include the
So
landfill.
Allison, I might be able to help a little bit, Pam. So what they're doing tonight, and they're going to go into it in more detail, is we're going to identify future land use maps and open up opportunities for ourselves. Whether or not we choose to go in this direction will be a discussion for the municipality later. I will tell you that part of this is that the Act 250 process will remain, however, it will be administered locally. Okay, so the reality of it is the DRB right now already has that structure in place.
They do.
We already administer 3 of the 10 or 11 criteria. We would have to adopt some of the policies and protocols if the city decides to do this that the state is administering now. However, it does give local control, which has a significant economic benefit. We have, as a city, because of our infrastructure and some of our personal capabilities, there is the opportunity, if they so choose, to go in this direction, although I do think we'll have to upgrade our system.
So Rick's got his hand up, but
Yeah.
Rick, is this a question, or I was gonna see if we could continue with these slides and then bring up questions. Is that okay? I don't mean to make you pause on it. You got it, Buckhorn?
No, you speak my mind.
Okay, great. Okay. Back to it.
So there are other future land use categories on here, like the resource-based recreation area encompasses Gardner Park, and the light purple areas, and identify industrial areas and areas that are rail yards or big gravel pits and quarries.
And those are not in question.
Those are not getting any
Yeah.
benefits or exemptions,
Yeah.
those light purple areas.
Or not eligible for, not. Okay.
Yeah, they're not eligible for any of that.
So it's like the heavy industry that we've noted doesn't get.
Correct.
Yes.
So this is a simplified version of the map. It shows just 2 categories that are the 2 categories that the Department of Housing and Community Development will recognize once this map is approved. So as I just explained before, there's the downtown center in the dark purple, and that has been expanded from the initial area to include East Main Street and Gardner Park. And then the neighborhoods encompass much of the developable land in the city that is contiguous with the downtown and goes out to the hospital, out Highland Ave, and also down to the golf course. So this map breaks down the eligibility for tiers of Act 250. So Act 250, as we mentioned, there will be Tier 1A and Tier 1B that get exemption from the process. Tier 2 is largely the status quo. That will be most of the state of Vermont after all these maps are adopted. And then Tier 3 will be areas like wetlands and mountains that will have increased permitting under Act 250, but those are not identified on this map, and that is not NVDA's responsibility. That is the responsibility of the Agency of Natural Resources in consultation with the Land Use Review Board. So on this map, the dark purple, Tier 1A, are areas that are eligible if the city so chooses, and this is opt-in, but are eligible for a total exemption from Act 250. And then in the pink areas, we have Tier 1B eligible, so those are areas that can be exempt for housing purposes only. Projects of up to 50 acres on 10, up to 10 acres of land would be exempt from Act 250, but only if it's housing. And then the yellow areas would not receive any exemptions, and those would be Tier 2 or particularly
Or possibly.
by the wetland of at the mouth of the Black River could potentially be Tier 3, but we aren't identifying that.
So if you were to pursue Tier 1A eligibility, there would be a much stronger focus on the quality of your local land use regs. And first of all, you would have to adopt citywide stronger standards for managing flood hazard regs. They reference, the statute references 755B, and that's basically no adverse impact principles. So the standard inundation regs that you have will qualify you to get national flood insurance for any property owner in town. But they don't have no adverse impact principles, such as elevating structures at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation, the height that you can expect the water to get in a historically significant flood. Also, standard MNFIP compliant regs are silent on things like requiring compensatory flood storage so that you don't lose any flood storage capacity. And if you were to pursue this, and personally I think it's a good idea to do it whether or not you pursue Tier 1A or Tier 1B, the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, has already written model regs that are pretty clear on this, and they do have no adverse impact standards. They also require that new development is accessed by areas out of flood inundation areas, something that the National Flood Insurance standards are silent on. So it's worthwhile looking at those model regs, regardless of your decision. You would also be expected to adopt flood corridor regulations, and flood corridors river corridor regulations. And river corridors are areas that are prone to erosion from lateral movement of the stream channel. It's for streams of at least, with a watershed of at least a half a square mile or more. And the upshot of the river corridor regulations is you don't build any closer to the river corridor than what's already there. New development stays out of it. Most of our losses, our flood losses in Vermont, are attributed to erosion, about 80% of the expense. It's not to say that inundation regs aren't important. It's just that most of our rivers are in a state of flux, in a state of adjustment and trying to reestablish equilibrium. So again, even if whatever your decision is regarding Tier 1 status, this is a worthwhile exercise. Also, you would be expected to establish permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws that further smart growth principles. I think that your focus on form-based code achieves a lot of that by focusing on the public realm, focusing on walkability, minimizing parking standards for allowing for infill development, removing certain height standards, allowing for vertical development. But again, it would, your regulations would be examined if you were to pursue Tier 1A status.
Yes, we can do it. So, as we touched on earlier, another requirement for Tier 1A, which the city does not currently meet, would be to plan for the maintenance of significant natural communities, including rare, threatened, and endangered species. In Newport, the state identified rare, threatened, and endangered species are in the northern part of the city, just north of the hospital, basically. So in order to qualify for Tier 1A, you would either have to exclude those areas from the Tier 1A area, or you would have to amend your land use regulations to protect them. So this is the requirement that's sort of the least fleshed out, and the Land Use Review Board is currently developing guidance on this. And they say draft should be available in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Agency of Natural Resources may or may not end up creating a set of model bylaws that communities could adopt to meet this requirement. And as I said, this is really an evolving requirement, and the information we do have on this just comes from emails from Sarah Hadd, who's on the Land Use Review Board and is the coordinator of Tier 1A guidance and requirements and applications.
So finally, you would have to show that you have the staff, the capacity to administer all of this, to administer a coordinated and comprehensive approach to planning and development review. I think the important thing to remember in the absence of Act 250 oversight, the onus of managing development will rest entirely on you. So you're just going to have to look closely at capacity. And this will have to be considered in an application to the Land Use Review Board if you are to pursue
Tier 1A.
Tier 1A status.
So Tier 1A, if you ended up pursuing it, you probably wouldn't be granted it for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Tier 1B is accessible more quickly. We expect that to be accessible sort of in the second half of 2026. So a lot of our towns that are looking at Tier 1A also want Tier 1B, whether it be in the meantime until they get Tier 1A or just for those areas that aren't eligible. So the requirements for Tier 1B are to have areas mapped for Tier 1B, which you do on those maps, to have a regionally approved plan, which as Allison has said, you do, to have permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws in accordance with 24 VSA 4414, 4418, and 4442 numbers, which you have. And then the fourth thing relates again to flooding and river corridor bylaws. So for a Tier 1B requirement is it either excludes identifying flood hazard and fluvial erosion areas unless it contains pre-existing development that could be suitable for infill housing development, unless the town or city has adopted municipal-wide flood hazard and river corridors consistent with the state standards, and in that case you can include those areas in the Tier 1B area. You need to have water supply, wastewater infrastructure, or soils that can accommodate a community wastewater disposal system for compact housing development in the areas proposed for Tier 1B. And then you need municipal staff, officials, or contracted capacity adequate to support review and zoning administration.
And 1B applies to housing only?
Correct.
Housing only.
Of up to
It's
50
a limited
units.
exemption. And the Tier 1B status, both statuses are opt-in. Tier 1B status would be requested in a memo prior to the adoption of
our
the
regional plan.
The Tier 1A status would be requested directly from the Land Use Review Board from the municipality after our plan is approved.
So the benefits of Tier 1B, as I said, is it's available sooner than Tier 1A, and that any housing developments of up to 50 units on up to 10 acres will be exempt from Act 250 if and only if they're in the Tier 1B area. And then the next slide is a sample resolution. So if Newport were to proceed with Tier 1B before NVDA submits our regional plan to the Land Use Review Board, which we anticipate doing roughly June of 2026, you would need to adopt a resolution such as this. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but this is sort of the model form where you say that you're meeting the requirements and that the city council wants to do this. And then someone has to sign it and date it, and yeah, it's not too complicated.
Another point, if you are to pursue either Tier 1 status, if we go back to the one that shows the eligibility areas,
The map.
whatever,
It says tiers.
whatever
That-
sub area is, that you're eligible for, you can't cherry pick here. So you can't say, oh, well, we want to make everything exempt here, but not here. It needs to be applied uniformly. And that's because of an additional requirement in planning that you can't impose an undue environmental benefit or burden on certain populations. So if it might affect certain populations in your community unfairly, you'd have to present a compelling case for cherry picking. So, you know, based on the future land use map that we came up with, these are the areas that are eligible. So whatever status you're pursuing, you know, it's applied equally. The other thing that you can do.
Well, I mean, there could be some wiggle room. Like if you didn't want like this portion of the
But you would
area
have to change your
excluded.
future land use map to do that. Right.
Okay.
Main, because, and the other thing is that you could also, just because you're eligible for Tier 1A, you could also just apply for Tier 1B for everywhere.
Everywhere that is eligible for one of the tier 1s, not the
Yeah.
areas that are in yellow on this map.
Yeah, correct.
It looks like this map effectively includes all of the areas that would be potentially significant in terms of unusual plants or anything like that. It looks like you've drawn very nice lines around most of the swampy areas, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so it excludes wetlands, any undeveloped river corridors, as well as most of the floodplain of Lake from Agog. But it does include currently, I think the rare, threatened, endangered species are right about here or right about here. So if you were not to adopt bylaws to protect those species and you do seek Tier 1A, that would be removed from that purple area.
So those species aren't in the wetland, they're right in the residential neighborhoods?
It's
I don't remember off the top of my
imprecise
head.
information, but yeah, we weren't able to isolate those from the future land use map.
Yeah, well, do we even know what they are?
Yeah, there's information on the A&R atlas. I just haven't looked at it in a couple weeks, so I don't remember what the species is. I think it's like a fish or bird or something.
Well, it's animal, not a plant.
Oh, I was actually wondering, I was like, could be some like.
They can be plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we have a comment from a resident, but just to kind of, did you guys have any more slides? Sorry to jump around.
No.
No, our last slide was just, if you have questions, we have some links to things and we list our emails.
Leon, could you expand a little bit on the center benefits and the neighborhood benefits for them? I think that would be enormously helpful, because the Act 250 and tiers is one thing, but the benefits of the center and the neighborhood are far more reaching.
So because you have a designated downtown center already, it would enter the centers program from the state as a step 3, which is the highest center, or the highest category. And there's a long list of benefits. Sales tax reallocation funding, National Main Street accreditation, waymaking signage exemptions, housing permit appeal limitations, downtown transportation funding, which a lot of communities really appreciate, infrastructure funding priorities, 30 low speed limits below 25 miles an hour. There's about, I think, 15 benefits on this list.
But also the lighter pink areas that would.
Can you go back a slide?
The planned growth areas would, and the village areas.
The pink areas on this one.
Yeah, would also be eligible for pretty much all of the same benefits, with the exception of access to the downtown transportation fund.
It's a little bit of a shorter list, but there's benefits.
And tax credits are like the signature benefit, and those would be available too. Tax credits for reinvestment in income producing properties. anything that's 30 years or older.
And it can be a multifamily home of at least 3 units or a business are eligible for these tax credits, and they're typically the state gives a business a certificate, and the business sells the certificate to a bank, and then they can use the money for maintenance and upgrade of their business or of their building, or to upgrade, invest in the business.
And they're typically sold for about 90 cents on the dollar, and they just parlay it back into the project.
I was just gonna say, appreciate you walking through all of that, because it's technically lots of things to at play. I feel like it's definitely worth a conversation within the city to understand that capacity, because I see that the economic benefits and bringing in housing and all of these things, because Act 250 can be somewhat burdensome, but I understand the responsibility that would leave the city in. I really want to make sure that we're good there. And I was wondering are the river corridor bylaws included in the new bylaws?
Where we're at is the special flood hazard and the floodway regulations were already adopted, upgraded, and should meet the new standards with the new bylaw. Allison actually sent me the river corridor model regulations of 3 weeks ago. The planning commission has done their work on them. They're complete. We're gonna send them back to Allison to double check before we finalize them. So we already believe that we've achieved that. In addition to that, when we start talking about some of the smart growth techniques and stuff that have to be incorporated, we believe that that's also been done into the new bylaws that are set to be. So we're really ready in those 2 areas. Obviously, there may be some tweaking that needs to be done, but I think it would be minor. Again, these are the new bylaws that have not been submitted to you for approval yet, but have been completed.
But this was the bylaw update that was produced using the bylaw modernization grant, and you worked with Randy Smith.
Correct.
I just, before we open it up, I know there's some hands up in the chat, but I don't know if you wanted to keep it here or move it there. Okay. I know Brian Gray, you put your hand up a minute ago. I'm just giving you a second, and I'm gonna get the technology on there.
Yeah, just one. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Just one question. Once the FLU map is accepted and approved, is there a process to revise in the future?
So the next big overhaul would be so this will be for our 2026 regional plan. So our next big overhaul of the map will do the next big overhaul of our regional plan, which will be in 2034, but there will be the opportunity, so I think starting in 2029, for amendments to the future land use map. If there's an area of more than 10 acres that municipality would like moved from one category to the other, that can be submitted by an amendment, which is its own process that has to go to the Land Use Review Board. But that wouldn't be open for a couple years after the map is adopted.
Okay. And I just wanted to make one point in terms of Act 250. There's approximately 363 existing Act 250 permits within the city right now. So going forward, if the city decides to pursue Tier 1A, those 363 don't go away. They run with the land, and everyone will still have to follow the rules of that existing permit.
You're correct, except that it depends where they are in the exemption area. So it might make sense to look at some of your existing permits and see if they would actually fall inside one of the Tier 1 areas. Because if they didn't,
it would just be if it was in the Tier 1A area. If it's in the Tier 1B area and there's an existing permits, it's status quo.
Yeah.
But if it's in the Tier 1A area, then the city has to take over the permit and make sure that the permit conditions continue to be followed by the property owner.
So, but I'm assuming that Frank isn't gonna end up with all 363 permits,
Well, I would assume some of
which you're
them
probably
are
relieved about.
on the fringes of the city.
Yeah. But it might make sense to go through the Active 50 database and just try to map where some of those existing permits are. And see where they fall in that radius.
I'm a bit confused with that answer. My understanding is those run with the land, they're not going to be extinguished based on going to Tier 1A.
No, they're not going to be extinguished, but what I'm saying is you have 363 permits that are issued within the municipality. All 363 permits are not going to be turned over to local administration. It's going to be the permits that fall inside the Tier 1A area.
Correct. I gotcha. I just want to make the point that we're not losing the existing Act 250 permit requirements.
Right.
Okay, and I'm gonna pass it to Rick, because sorry, I probably should have gotten his input. Okay. Rick, did you want to weigh in? Because I'll see you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, so I have a question and then just a quick comment. Question is, yes, I understand it. You're not asking for action from the council tonight, but you've begun a conversation with our planning commission about whether or not we approve of and are supportive of the map the way it's drawn going forward. Can you talk about what it is you need from us and kind of how you expect that part to unfold? And before I give it over, I'll just say, so that I'm in again, how grateful I am to NVDA, to both of you and your colleagues. I have an idea, only because I've been talking with Liam all summer about the amount of work that's gone into this just for our town, and I'm aware that you're doing it for 50 towns across the region. So thank you for all you're doing on our behalf.
Well, you're welcome. Some towns don't have anything going on in the Northeast Kingdom, so those towns are pretty easy. But to answer your question, shoot, now I forgot what your question was. What was your question?
No, what the next steps should be.
Oh, so the map approval, we expect, and I mean, if the city council wants to vote on that, they're welcome to, but that's largely the purview of the planning commission, whereas the Tier 1B resolution or Tier 1A application is the exclusive responsibility of the city council.
And I think that decision would definitely be informed by an ongoing dialogue with the planning commission.
Oh, for sure.
I've never expected to walk into any of these meetings. We're only meeting with 3 communities that would even qualify for Tier 1A status. And I've never walk out to, expecting to say, yeah, we're in. You have some difficult discussions to happen. So this is the start, hopefully, of a productive dialogue.
Okay, yeah. I'll move it to Kevin. That's public.
I have 2 questions. One is, just so I'm clear, you said that if the city doesn't want to go towards Tier 1A to begin with, we could take the Tier 1A area and combine it and ask for Tier 1B status for both of those, the Tier 1B part and the Tier 1A.
Correct.
If we did that, and then at some other point we wanted to apply for the Tier 1A, could we still do that? Like upgrade it to a Tier 1A?
You can apply anytime after January 2026. So and you would not be able to apply before then anyway, because you have to wait for our regional plan to be approved.
Okay, for either Tier 1A or B?
No, for Tier 1A.
For Tier 1A,
Tier 1A, because in that case, you are applying directly to the Land Use Review Board, and it's going to be based, and the eligibility area is going to be based on the area that's delineated in the regional plan, and by then it would have to have been approved and adopted and approved by the Land Use Review Board.
Okay. And I might have missed this somehow, but can you just say a couple words about how you decided which would be tier 1A or tier 1B, or like how do you come up with a future land use map?
Okay.
Like, what do you do?
it's
And I know we
laid out-
don't have a lot of time.
It's laid out in statute, and then there's about a 22-page document that was established by a committee of people from different regional planning commissions. And so we follow that methodology to a T, and it says you have to have this and this to be eligible for village area, tier 1B,
Okay.
and you need to have complete streets and public water access and dense zoning to have tier 1A. The requirements are very exact, and there's a little bit of interpretation, but most of it's pretty predetermined.
So you took all that and just, applied it to all of
Yeah.
City of Newport. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 questions. The first one is, I remember many years ago, our then city manager, John Ward, when he was approached by, or when the city was approached by the EB5 people, said that he had been told that with respect to what was going to happen, that not a pebble should be put in the path of the economic development that would occur with EB5. And so my concern when we take away Act 250 is that a town is in a strange position. It desperately wants, usually, economic development at almost any cost. And it is reluctant, therefore, to be telling, to be doing the Act 250 kind of work that would limit economic development because of some other reason. What do you tell communities with regard to that division?
The first thing that you do is you look very closely at your planning policies and see how they align with your existing bylaws. You work with you also encourage the planning commission to look very closely at their own zoning standards to make sure that they're at the top of their A game. I don't think there's an easy answer on that. If it's going to be resting entirely on the community, you just have to pay closer scrutiny to your regulations.
And secondly, you mentioned a 2-foot limit with regard to the flooding. And I was just wondering, are current buildings grandfathered in to not need to be 2 feet above whatever the floodplain you were talking about? Or does every building have to be modified in some way to conform?
So when I was talking about elevating new structures above 2 feet above the base flood, the base flood is the level that you can expect the water to get in a significant flood event. So generally, properties are grandfathered. There are some exceptions so that if 50% of the structure, the value of the building has been damaged, or more than, there's an investment being made into a building that represents more than 50% of the value of the structure, then you might be looking at some required elevation, because you don't want people to keep investing new monies in structures that are below what they call the design flood. There are exceptions for historic structures, and those standards often include floodproofing up to a certain level, and moving utilities building utilities out of harm's way. And that's something else that you can look at in your flood regs.
And that would apply to every building?
So to qualify, if you were just doing this just to pursue Tier 1A status, you would still have to adopt flood hazard regulations citywide.
Okay.
But that applies to the FEMA map floodplain. It doesn't apply to buildings that are not in the floodplain. Is that correct?
Correct. For inundation hazards, you would base it on what's on your FEMA maps.
And just because I'm ignorant with respect to it, can you just give us a brief overview of how NVDA functions within the state wanting this to happen and you helping it to happen?
So we are tasked with developing a regional plan. That's our primary responsibility. And we have always been required to have a future land use map. And in the past, we depicted our future land use map with a series of dots, basically, showing the centers of development and then a description of the open areas and the high elevation areas and the environmentally sensitive areas that we wanted to protect. Part of Act 181, it was kind of like a grand compromise. If you wanted some Act 250 reform, some exemption, then all of the regional planning commissions had to have consistent future land use maps. They all had to follow the same methodologies.
And use the same categories and same colors.
Yeah, even the same colors, and the colors are carefully selected to accommodate most forms of color blindness. And so that's what we have been working on right now, and it's been our primary focus to come up with a future land use map that establishes, using the methodology, areas that we can justify saying, yes, this could meet a potential exemption for either partial or full from Act 250. But again, that exemption is an opt-in. It's an opt-in at the municipal level. We do the mapping information, but the rest of it is up to you.
Thank you.
So at this point, there are only 3 of the 50-odd communities in the kingdom that are potentially eligible for this?
Newport, St. Johnsbury, and Hardwick would be eligible for
Tier 1A.
Tier 1A. And we only have a handful of communities that would be eligible for Tier 1B as well.
Because of the additional zoning requirements?
Mostly our communities don't have subdivision regs.
So like the only other community in Orleans County that has subdivision regulations is Derby.
And as a matter of fact, we're doing a training on subdivision regs on October 7th. And that one of our concerns is that if communities are feeling inspired to adopt subdivision regs so they can check a box in favor of achieving an exemption, we want to make sure that those regulations are actually really relevant for the community and effective at promoting the kinds of developments that work for our region.
Yeah, so the towns that don't have zoning at all are just out of the picture here.
This is all hypothetical. I mean, they can have an opportunity to expand their designated village centers.
But they don't have the opportunity for Act 250
They have
exemptions.
they have no Act 250 relief.
October 7th, where?
We're going to do it online. It's a webinar. And our guest speaker is going to be Dan Malik, who is Du Bois and King, who's now working with the city on bike use, or a bike path. But he's also the complete streets guy. He's the complete streets guru.
Can we get the link?
Pardon?
Can I get the link?
When we set it up, absolutely. And I'm really excited about the training. So, yeah, absolutely.
I got my GED, I'm in.
Pardon?
I got a GED, I'm in.
Okay.
Great.
Good enough diploma.
Yes, and
Can you tell me why a town like Burlington is not in the mix when you say, 3 towns are
Because they're not in
eligible?
our region. We're only talking about the Northeast Kingdom.
Burlington
okay.
definitely
Yeah.
seeking tier 1A, that's not.
I'm sorry.
Burlington's not our problem.
Okay, got it.
Got the monkeys.
Not our circus.
Yeah. Sorry.
Any other questions?
please.
Oh wow, there's a lot of people online.
Well, just so that you know, we do have an Act 181 resource page on our website too.
Oh, yeah.
That's on the end of our
Yes.
slides.
Yes.
Apologies.
We've had a couple of trainings on it and we keep adding stuff. This has been a journey for us, so the more we learn.
But the first link on this here, nvda.net/act181.php is our Act 181 landing page, and there is 2 webinars, there's some frequently asked questions, and a couple of other resources on that page.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up is Mr. Brown. The facility fee schedule approval.
I'll be a lot quicker than NVDA, so there's a memo in your packet. We're just looking to slightly increase the seasonal slip rates and the seasonal mooring rates. And you'll see down the bottom here, there's a couple changes. We're looking to just strike out the monthly mooring rate, and that's when a boat owner rents a city-owned tackle. In the past 4 years, probably, I'm sure longer, we've had no customers take that. So we can leave it, just to clean up the list a little bit, just strike it from the list. I'm also looking to lower the seasonal mooring rate, and that's for someone with a boat that wants to rent a city-owned mooring and tackle. Right now, it's $750 a season. We are the only people on this side of the lake that do that. We have a lot of inquiries, and we don't have any takers. We're not going to lose any money by lowering the rate and try to increase business. So I propose lowering the rate to $450. Also, on the list, we request to increase the fees for our tournaments, just to put us more in line with other communities that do tournament styles. Hyde Park charges $100 per field. So, and this kind of puts it in line but doesn't raise it too much in one season. So that's all we're requesting.
You looked at Hyde Park and then...
Hyde Park is the other community that does tournaments like us.
Okay, so there weren't that many comps.
So they couldn't go to like the Barton Fairgrounds or any?
I don't think they do. They just do us, Hyde Park, yeah.
Well, of course, you have to lay the fields out.
Right.
Well, they have to be usable fields.
That would be my only concern with that. We'd hate to lose that revenue.
This puts us in line with them.
Nothing about Party Beach or...
No, we raised those a season ago, so we're still in line with Charbo and Tree Corners, so I think next season we'll revisit that. We don't want to price ourselves out of the market. We gained a lot of new business. We marketed down south this year in anticipation of what's going on with the northern traffic. We did a marketing campaign down 95 to Florida, so we gained a lot of business. So we're holding our own there, so I don't want to price us out of the market at Party Beach.
Specific question about the meters down at the marina. Is there a separate one that you have for the boat hookups, like these?
The power pedestals?
Yeah, so like, can you monitor who's actually using power?
Well, that's part of the slip. So we have slips with power and slips without power. It comes with it. They're more expensive.
Yeah.
We don't meter those. It's just the seasonal rate. We charge per foot. So it comes with the slip.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation in the future, because I was walking around with the Efficiency Vermont person and they were talking and asking questions, and I was like, I don't think we have specific meters for boats, and.
We don't, we do have commercial meters.
Right.
So when they pull out, when the Northern Star comes in and the Bell comes in, we meter them for the winter. So we have those rates if you need to look at those. And we do charge them for their off-season use.
Right, so it's like a standard, obviously, this is just based upon the meter and
And they
then kind of
don't
roughly
use-
divided by how many.
Yeah, and they don't
people
use a lot of electricity. The ones that do use the power pedestal slips.
Okay. Again, this person lives, speaking of the Burlington area, and I think there's larger boats and maybe they do different things down there. So that's all I was asking, is it was relevant or recent. So, thank you. Yeah, no.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Any questions? Then I would entertain a motion for approval of the fee schedule as presented by Mr. Brown for the 2026
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, motion passed. Mr. Chip Stearns is up next with proposed action from the financial. No.
Good evening, council members. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
We're good to go. So continuing down the line of reviewing balance sheets, still working with the auditors on completing FY25. It was brought to my attention because I read it, that we have two funds that are basically pass-through funds that over a number of years have seen revenue go into them and the expenses go out in some other fund, and I would typically say that was the general fund. And so I present to you those two funds as being the CDBG fund, number 5, and the public safety fund, number 6, with the amounts as presented that are residual fund balances, I think from a incorrect accounting process in which revenues were received but expenditures were elsewhere. And this does not involve closing bank accounts and moving money. This is simply an accounting procedure in which the obligations of the general fund to these two funds shall be relieved.
Yep, so
One second.
the financial task force discussed this, and like most things, there's no actual cash in these accounts. We're just making them shore up, just as Chip said. We're not going to see a bump.
But they're still keeping them?
Like the values, correct, Chip? Sorry if I just...
Yeah, they are just values that have been residual and generated over years. For example, Stone Garden, which we're familiar with, is a reimbursable fund. And there have been times in the past in which the Stone Garden reimbursement was put into the public safety fund when it should have simply been reimbursement into the general fund. And so we spent the money out of the general fund, but we gave the credit back to the Special Service Police Fund. And over time, that fund grew to retain a value which was no longer valid. And so to bring them in line with what their cash assets say today, we can transfer value from those two funds to the general fund, relieving the general fund of being in a position where it reports that it owes them money, because it really does not.
Do you need anything for the council? Or is this just?
I would just like the council to authorize the city treasurer to make the financial adjustment to the accounts.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion is passed.
Rick, we passed it, but any comments?
No, that's fine. I was anticipating and just wanted to chime in because I don't think Chip has anything else. And I wanted to let the council members know that Chip and Carter and I are talking about having Chip be on the agenda for next week to do the review of the balance sheets and the actual to budget year to date. So we'll be back in a week to talk more.
It's gonna take a while to clean everything up. All right, anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot longer. I'll see you next week.
All right, thank you, Chair.
All right, have a good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Lady.
Our next item is the task force report. We'll start off with water and sewer.
Well, you've effectively heard most of our report already through other people, through Corey and the mayor. At our next meeting, we're going to be looking at the 5-year projection requirements for the water and sewer budgets.
Okay.
And we're also still working on the ordinance. That's right.
Financial reporting.
Yeah, so I am going to share, 1 second, sorry gang. Well, okay, it's in the packet. I don't have it pulled up on the page. I could take a minute. Would we rather me take 2 minutes to pull it up, or does everybody have a copy of the packet? I'm sorry, I realized that I had the maps. That was what I was dialed into prior to this meeting, but I realized the lapse in that. So what I'm referring to is the annual budget cycle. So it's just a nice graphic within the council packet. And I was just going to use that to refer and say that we are on track with our new budgeting model. So, oh my gosh, it's been a minute. We as in Rick, Chip, Carrie was in the room, I was in the room, went with all the department heads and talked about future budgeting processes, and basically all department heads are on the same page. They are cooperating. They are doing their absolute best to basically name and label all expenses so that we can have a better understanding of what these tasks are for. So in my graphic, which is sideways, it says September, October, staff developed their proposed budget and accompanying budget narrative. So that's at the 12 o'clock. That's where we're at. We're churning along well there. And the idea moving forward also is to I don't want to say clean up the chart of accounts, but make it more readable, understandable, and actually realistic to what the department heads are working and spending their funds on, and how they tie to those goals and those narratives that accompany the budget. So some examples would be in pretty much all department areas. There's like salary and then benefits and vacation. It's just like, it's juncated so much that it doesn't really matter when everybody's working together and everybody gets benefits, everybody gets vacation. It should just be in one line. So there's just ways that, and the department heads all kind of weighed in and are all on the same page, like I said. So Chip is going to be working with them. So that's kind of the background work. But again, moving forward, the next dial, it says November 1st, staff distributes the proposed budgets and budget narrative. I'm not sure if we're going to necessarily hit that target. We're aiming for it, but that's what's coming down the pipes next. So as far as our new budgeting process, that's what's going on. And as far as the financial task force, we discussed some other things. The item that Chip just brought up was more imperative, and other ones have to do with more conversation around like the language for next year's budget and how it's presented in articles for the public to vote on town meeting day. Other things about the increment of when we'll be taxed. Right now we do it at 2 years, but we're looking at 4. or sorry, so it's billed at 2 times a year versus maybe if we did 4 times a year. Again, this is, I'm just sharing this to be transparent, and if you haven't watched all of the titillating videos that happen on Friday, this is just, I'm sharing, but this isn't definitive. And then other items, let's see. Sorry, I'm going back to my slideshow in my head. Anyways, if it comes to my mind, it'll be really important. But so the ongoing discussion, we are also working on our 10-year annual projection for the lenders, looking at large capital expenses that might be coming down the pipe. So that was kind of fun to go realize that, okay, 5 years, all right, we think we know what's going on, and then you do 10 years and you're like, oh my. So especially with around like the wastewater plant and things like that. So that is what we are working on, as well as I am specifically tasked with looking at internal controls. VLCT has some suggestions. Chip has shared what is required by state statute. And so I'm going to be bugging Jim this week to work with him and see what we have already in place, how those register and compare with the other 2 models, and then go from there. So that, I think, summarizes what we've been doing. You want to add anything, Rick?
No, I think that's a good description.
Okay, a little rambling, but I think it's mostly all there.
Quite a lot going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
The next one was the task force on homeless, on house. I believe we had a meeting a couple weeks ago. We are plugging away still, not only on the ordinance, but also exploring possibilities of maybe some local nonprofits possibly having like a temporary shelter. It's still very preliminary, and there's not a lot of hard data to give in. So that's developing. As I said, we're still plugging away. Our next meeting is this Thursday, September 11th at 3:30. It's important to know that that is a different day than we normally meet on. We normally go on a Wednesday, but for this one we're doing Thursday, September 11th, and it should be very informative as we continue to explore options for shelter and see how that goes. Mr. Touchette.
So the fire department strategic planning, we do have some information, and we're just putting it together now for the last 5 years, but it's taking a lot of time because it breaks it down call by call, the amount of manpower, staffing per call, the response time, the in-service time. There's a lot of information. So we just received that last week, and we are putting it all together to incorporate the hours per call to show how many people, what we have for staffing throughout every call. And we're going to get that together and be able to have more information on it, because what we were looking at is factual, and we want to make sure that the call, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. It could be a call in the middle of the night. We get the same response as we would maybe during the middle of the day. Just people are working out of town, or there's overwhelming support during the day. We had a call last week and 12 people showed up during the middle of the day. So it just so happened that a bunch of people were in town. Very fortunate for that call, but it's very sporadic. But we want to make sure that we have all the details so we can put that together for everybody and show that. We also are still working on a RMS, which is a reporting management system. We currently do not have just one. We have, there's approximately 4 different locations that we have the information. So we're looking at options to potentially go to one system, get one system that can do all this information. So a click of a button can show you a graph for the last year of statistics or anything like that. So that's where we're at. We have not set our next meeting date because a few of us are working on getting this information compiled and together, and then we're going to set the next date for the meeting. That is all we have.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, you're,
Have specific meters for boats and.
We don't, we do have commercial meters.
Right.
So when they pull out, when the Northern Star comes in and the Bell comes in, we meter them for the winter. So we have those rates if you need to look at those. And we do charge them for their off-season use.
Right, so it's like a standard, obviously, this is just based upon the meter and
And they
then kind of
don't
roughly
use-
divided by how many.
Yeah, and they don't
people
use a lot of electricity. The ones that do use the power pedestal slips.
Okay. Again, this person lives, speaking of the Burlington area, and I think there's larger boats and maybe they do different things down there. So that's all I was asking, since it was relevant or recent. So, thank you. Yeah, no,
That's all I have.
yeah.
any questions? Then I would entertain a motion for approval of the fee schedule as presented by Mr. Brown for the 2026.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, motion passed. Mr. Chip Stearns is up next with proposed action from the financial. No.
Good evening, council members. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep.
Yes.
We're good to go. So continuing down the line of reviewing balance sheets, still working with the auditors on completing FY25. It was brought to my attention because I read it, that we have two funds that are basically pass-through funds that over a number of years have seen revenue go into them and the expenses go out in some other fund, and I would typically say that was the general fund. And so I present to you those two funds as being the CDBG fund, number 5, and the public safety fund, number 6, with the amounts as presented that are residual fund balances, I think from a incorrect accounting process in which revenues were received but expenditures were elsewhere. And this does not involve closing bank accounts and moving money. This is simply an accounting procedure in which the obligations of the general fund to these two funds shall be relieved.
Yep, so
One second.
the financial task force discussed this, and like most things, there's no actual cash in these accounts. We're just making them shore up, just as Chip said. We're not going to see a bump.
But they're still keeping them?
Like the values, correct, Chip? Sorry if I just...
Yeah, they are just values that have been residual and generated over years. For example, Stone Garden, which we're familiar with, is a reimbursable fund. And there have been times in the past in which the Stone Garden reimbursement was put into the public safety fund when it should have simply been reimbursement into the general fund. And so we spent the money out of the general fund, but we gave the credit back to the Special Service Police Fund. And over time, that fund grew to retain a value which was no longer valid. And so to bring them in line with what their cash assets say today, we can transfer value from those two funds to the general fund, relieving the general fund of being in a position where it reports that it owes them money, because it really does not.
Do you need anything for the council? This just,
I would just like the council to authorize the city treasurer to make the financial adjustment to the accounts.
can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion is passed.
Rick, we passed it, but any comments?
No, that's fine. I was anticipating and just wanted to chime in because I don't think Chip has anything else. And I wanted to let the council members know that Chip and Carter and I are talking about having Chip be on the agenda for next week to do the review of the balance sheets and the actual to budget year to date. So we'll be back in a week to talk more.
It's gonna take a while to clean everything up. All right, anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot longer. I'll see you next week.
All right, thank you, Chair.
All right, have a good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Lady.
Our next item is the task force report. We'll start off with water and sewer.
Well, you've effectively heard most of our report already through other people, through Corey and the mayor. At our next meeting, we're going to be looking at the 5-year projection requirements for the water and sewer budgets.
Okay.
And we're also still working on the ordinance. That's right.
Financial reporting.
Yeah, so I am going to share, 1 second, sorry gang. Well, okay, it's in the packet, I don't have it pulled up on the page. I could take a minute. Would we rather me take 2 minutes to pull it up, or does everybody have a copy of the packet? I'm sorry, I realized that I had the maps. That was what I was dialed into prior to this meeting, but I realized the lapse in that. So what I'm referring to is the annual budget cycle, so it's just a nice graphic within the council packet. And I was just going to use that to refer and say that we are on track with our new budgeting model. So, oh my gosh, it's been a minute. We as in Rick, Chip, Carrie was in the room, I was in the room, went with all the department heads and talked about future budgeting processes, and basically all department heads are on the same page. They are cooperating. They are doing their absolute best to basically name and label all expenses so that we can have a better understanding of what these tasks are for. So in my graphic, which is sideways, it says September, October, staff developed their proposed budget and accompanying budget narrative. So that's at the 12 o'clock. That's where we're at. We're churning along well there. And the idea moving forward also is to I don't want to say clean up the chart of accounts, but make it more readable, understandable, and actually realistic to what the department heads are working and spending their funds on, and how they tie to those goals and those narratives that accompany the budget. So some examples would be in pretty much all department areas. There's like salary and then benefits and vacation. It's just like, it's juncated so much that it doesn't really matter when everybody's working together and everybody gets benefits, everybody gets vacation. It should just be in one line. So there's just ways that, and the department heads all kind of weighed in and are all on the same page, like I said. So Chip is going to be working with them. So that's kind of the background work. But again, moving forward, the next dial, it says November 1st, staff distributes the proposed budgets and budget narrative. I'm not sure if we're going to necessarily hit that target. We're aiming for it, but that's what's coming down the pipes next. So as far as our new budgeting process, that's what's going on. And as far as the financial task force, we discussed some other things. The the item that Chip just brought up was more imperative, and other ones have to do with more conversation around like the language for next year's budget and how it's presented in articles for the public to vote on town meeting day. Other things about the increment of when we'll be taxed. Right now we do it at 2 years, but we're looking at 4. Or sorry, so it's billed at 2 times a year versus maybe if we did 4 times a year. Again, this is, I'm just sharing this to be transparent, and if you haven't watched all of the titillating videos that happen on Friday, this is just, I'm sharing, but this isn't definitive. And then other items, let's see. Sorry, I'm going back to my slideshow in my head. Anyways, if it comes to my mind, it'll be really important. But so the ongoing discussion, we are also working on our 10-year annual projection for the lenders, looking at large capital expenses that might be coming down the pipe. So that was kind of fun to go realize that, okay, 5 years, all right, we think we know what's going on, and then you do 10 years and you're like, oh my. So especially with around like the wastewater plant and things like that. So that is what we are working on, as well as I am specifically tasked with looking at internal controls. VLCT has some suggestions. Chip has shared what is required by state statute. And so I'm going to be bugging Jim this week to work with him and see what we have already in place, how those register and compare with the other 2 models, and then go from there. So that, I think, summarizes what we've been doing. You want to add anything, Rick?
No, I think that's a good description.
Okay, a little rambling, but I think it's mostly all there.
Quite a lot going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
The next one was the task force on homeless, on house. I believe we had a meeting a couple weeks ago. We are plugging away still, not only on the ordinance, but also exploring possibilities of maybe some local nonprofits possibly having like a temporary shelter. It's still very preliminary, and there's not a lot of hard data to give in. So that's developing. As I said, we're still plugging away. Our next meeting is this Thursday, September 11th at 3:30. It's important to know that that is a different day than we normally meet on. We normally go on a Wednesday, but for this one we're doing Thursday, September 11th, and it should be very informative as we continue to explore options for